Hey guys, what's going on? Today I want to sort of pitch an idea to you guys of something that I've been working on since around last November. I've been thinking about it and working on it for quite a while now, and I just want to get all my thoughts and ideas about this out there so the community can judge it and provide feedback and just give a general consensus on whether it's something they'd like to see or not. Before I get into this, I just want to say, yes, I'm a Call of Duty Zombies fan. Don't judge me. No, I'm not trying to copy it. And yes, I have taken the odd inspiration from it. So I present to you Firefight Containment, a twist on Firefight that relies more on survival with an underlying story. What I'm thinking is it's more of a specific story-based version of Firefight. So it's not just focusing purely on killing wave after wave after wave of enemies, it's focused more on survival, and behind the scenes, behind this survival, you've got a really deep, rich story. You've got details in the Halo expanded universe that have yet to be brought into games, being brought into this mode specifically, and being fleshed out more, with some damn good gameplay on the side. So, let's delve into the details of Firefight Containment. I'm going to go over the story first, and then I'm going to go into the gameplay aspects. So, the first map in this Firefight Containment series is a highly classified, and in air quotes, non-existent, flood research facility on Installation 07, which is run and overlooked by Oni. It's an old Combat Evolved style Forerunner containment facility that's being used for Oni research. The environment would be part Forerunner and part human, with some outside areas in the natural Halo Ring environment. The facility is working on a vaccine, not to stop the flood entirely, but to attempt to prevent human infection by placing an enzyme in the blood that kills an infection form. When the infection form tries to inject its tentacles into the human, the enzyme in the blood attacks them, and therefore kills the form and prevents the infection. Oni were also undergoing Project Cleanse, which is the development and testing of prototype flood-specific weaponry, which specialises in killing the infection form and destroying the host's body at the same time. These would mainly be weapons focused on emitting extremely high temperatures, so would be like handheld flamethrowers and lasers, etc., that a regular marine could carry with ease, not like the flamethrower and Spartan laser that realistically only Spartans can really use as portable weapons. This would let 343 go crazy with weapon variants and rec weapons. Because of this, there are multiple rec stations scattered around the map, as ultimately these weapons were going to be installed into the stations to allow very select groups of Spartans to spawn them in Warzone simulations specific for flood training. So, the mode kicks off with a cutscene. I'm not too sure about the specific details of this cutscene yet, but it'd briefly introduce you to each character that you play as, and then eventually you'd see a containment breach occur, and the flood begins spreading throughout the facility. By luck, the only people to survive the containment breach are our characters, who run into each other and decide to stick together. Now, I toyed with the idea of having 4 or 5 playable characters, but ultimately 4 seemed like a nice number. These characters would be as follows. Number 1, a biochemist, one of the scientists who was working on the infection prevention vaccine, and also a past colleague of Dr. Halsey, who worked on the Orion and Orion 2 projects with her. He would have a very dark past, carrying the weight of the deaths of so many Spartan 2 recruits. He's also fairly sadistic, but he's a realist. He knows what needs to be done to better humanity in the long run. Think of a sort of human version of Faber. Number 2, a XENOARCHAEOLOGIST and weapons engineer. Formerly of Misria Armories, he's currently the head researcher and the lead engineer for Project Cleanse. He was poached by Oni after creating the Spartan laser to work on classified projects. This guy is crazy, loves destruction, hence his position. Think of him as sort of a young mad scientist who is obsessed with guns and flat out amazed by the flood. Number 3, a Special Operations Research ODST security guard. One of the many armed guards of the facility. This guy is the best of the best, seeing as he's guarding one of, if not the most important facility in human space. He's a grizzled Human Covenant war veteran, and one of the few survivors of the Voy incident, and he was hired by Oni to work security at this facility specifically because of this. He's cocky, but this cockiness hides his actual deep-seated fear of the flood. He's also prolific with weaponry, Human, Covenant and Promethean. And the final playable character would be an Oni Black Operations agent, and the overseer of the entire facility. She specialises in foreigner technology and has conducted extensive investigations on foreigner containment facilities that have been highly top secret. She's a natural leader and knows the reality of what Oni are gonna do when they find out what's happened to this facility. She's kind of like a Seren Osman, Sarah Palmer crossover, who's willing to make tough decisions to progress the work that goes on in the facility. So back to the cutscene. The entire facility is flood infested. Imagine the atmosphere to be very High Charity-like. There's green mist everywhere, dark hallways, lights are flickering, there's destroyed doors that combat forms have broken down to infect people hiding behind them, there are vents in the ceilings that have been broken open where infection forms have emerged from, and there's flood biomass beginning to collect on the walls that grows the longer you're playing. The cutscene then focuses on our 4 characters who are now together, and it flicks to gameplay, and we start inside a smallish room, and infection forms are pouring out of the vents. Your main objective is to survive for as long as possible, but the map contains an Easter egg that progresses the containment story. So this Easter egg would progress the main underlying story of Firefight Containment that would eventually supplement and run alongside the main Halo story. We'd have to find certain things in the map to begin side quests that feed into one another, eventually leading to the sort of completion of the map. Now bear in mind that the progress for this underlying story for Firefight Containment that I've come up with is sort of very prototype and pre-alpha, so there may be a few details here and there that are missing or not entirely correct, which will be changed eventually, if, of course, the community likes this idea. Obviously, our 4 characters are going to want to escape alive, so when they're traversing through this facility, they'll come across a dark room which has one flickering monitor. On this monitor, a Sangheli shipmaster will contact the facility. This shipmaster is stationed on one of the many Swords of Sanghelio's cruisers, which are currently orbiting Installation 07. He tells you that he sent a Spec Ops Sangheli unit down to the ring on a search and rescue mission to rescue 2 Sangheli scientists who went missing, collecting samples of fauna from the ring. Whilst on the mission, the Spec Ops Sangheli stumbled upon the facility mid-outbreak. The Spec Ops unit relayed this information back to the shipmaster, who had no information in his database at all on the facility, as, like I said before, it technically doesn't exist, so he told them to keep it under wraps. Long story short, the shipmaster wants to help the survivors escape, as he notices that the UNSC ships that are orbiting the ring are yet to actually react to this outbreak. This is likely because they're not even aware that the facility exists themselves. Before being rescued, however, the survivors must try and contain the outbreak, and the only way to do so is from within the facility. As the survivors battle through endless hordes of flood, they find better weapons, ultimately going to the weapons lab and finding prototype anti-flood weaponry. Using this weaponry, they continue to fight through the flood, eventually making their way to a purely foreigner room, which they judge to be the Sentinel Defense System control room. The group must then defend the room whilst the Oni agent decrypts the foreigner consoles and finds out how to reactivate the system's sentinels. While all of this is going on, the survivors are constantly fighting back wave after wave after wave of flood, and the shipmaster is also constantly communicating with you, feeding you information about the UNSC activity or lack thereof above the facility's general location. The Sentinels seem to be clearing up the outbreak, however begin falling to the flood in large numbers, and ultimately fail, as it turns out the defense room where they turn them on only activates local sentinels, and is not installation wide, so there's only a finite number of sentinels that can be available to help. The BIO-CHEMIST character comes to the conclusion that the best way to contain this outbreak is with a local small-scale detonation, and the XENOARCHAEOLOGIST leads them to the weapons lab once again to pick up a modified Havoc tactical nuke that's coincidentally been scaled down for small-scale use. They also take the blueprints for all the anti-flood weaponry. However, before they get there, the team first stop by the biolab to pick up the vaccine. It's here that the Oni agent reveals to the biochemist that the reason they weren't just ordered to cure the flood, more specifically prevent human infection, is because Oni are trying to weaponize the flood, and if a cure that wiped the flood out was stolen or fell into the wrong hands, it could severely jeopardize this. After battling out of the facility, the team rendezvous with a Spec Ops Sangheli unit, who reveal they just had to kill the 2 Sangheli scientists they were searching for, as they had been infected by the flood. This would eventually lead on to more maps and more missions, which would create a nice bridge for lore fans between games. Okay, so let's get into the gameplay of this mode. Squad mechanics would be used and would be extremely useful. The command system in Halo 5 will, I'm assuming, be upgraded with more commands and orders added in Halo 6. This could lead to some very interesting situations when, for example, you're playing Firefight Containment in matchmaking and you communicate with 3 other random people that you aren't talking to via the commands. The revive system from the Halo 5 campaign would also be added, as it makes for a far more cooperative experience, and insta-death when you sustain too much damage would be irritating and, to be honest, kind of boring. The game mode would feature requisitions, if they're in Halo 6. This would create an in-game currency in the form of energy. This energy would increase over time, but far slower than it does in regular Warzone. You would receive energy for killing Flood, completing side quests and objectives, and also over time. Energy would then be used to activate certain defences within the map, or to spawn in rec weapons from the rec stations that are scattered around the map. This would tie into the lore, as like I said before, the scientists were planning on installing the anti-flood weaponry into the rec stations for use by specific groups of Spartans in Wargame's flood training simulations. Rec weapons, armor mods, and power-ups would be available, however with modified rec levels for this mode in particular. For example, things like overshield and damage boost would see significantly higher rec levels, due to them being far more powerful and arguably far more useful in this mode than regular Warzone. Certain rec weapons would also be unavailable until you discover a certain part of the map. For example, heavy weaponry like the rocket launcher, Hydra, fuel rod, plasma caster, etc. would not be available until you reach the weapons lab. This promotes exploration and hopefully would make it so people wouldn't just sit in the same place for the entire game. Certain weapons, however, would be entirely unspawnable and would only be attainable by either being found in specific locations on the map or by killing combat forms that hold them. Vehicles would be a no-go, at least for this map, because it'd mostly be inside, and one of the things that I was really going for when I was sort of thinking about this game mode was a real horror experience, a survival horror experience, something that Halo's never truly had before. It's had essences of it in missions in the campaign. For example, the mission 343 Guilty Spark in Combat Evolved, that was a scary mission. That was freaky. When you first discovered the Flood, that was freaky. And that's the experience that I'm going for in this game mode. And in my opinion, being able to go around the map in a Ghost or a Mantis would kind of ruin the horror experience that I was really going for. So that's all I'm going to share about this concept in this video. If you enjoyed it, if you like the idea of it, if you like specific ideas of it, let me know what they are in the comments, and be sure to leave a like on the video to show support. If you didn't like it, or you didn't like specific parts of it, then let me know in the comments. Let me know what you didn't like. Maybe it's something that's changeable, or maybe it's something that shouldn't be in the mode. Let me know in the comments down below. The main reason I made this video is to gauge the community's response to it, to see if it's something that they would like, or not maybe. And if they do like it, then spread it across the community. Let 343 know. See that we want a survival horror game mode like this in the next game. Now is the best time to start coming up with concepts like this, because it's very likely that Halo 6 is in early development and they're adding new features or coming up with ideas for new features right now to implement into the game, and 343 are massively listening to us. They're listening to our criticisms, our requests, our queries, everything, and right now is the best time to start promoting new things like this for the next game. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'll be down in the comments for a very long time replying to as many comments as I possibly can, and I'll see you in the next video.